This is Cyber Smokehouse, and I'm Ernie.
And I'm Graeme.
Join us as we grill the minds, dig into the experience, and serve up the stories of leaders in cybersecurity.
Cyber Smokehouse is sponsored by TBD Cyber, a cybersecurity strategy consulting firm.
We are very excited to talk to our guest today. Have you ever wondered how to manage the IT team during and after a major breach? Our guest today will share his experience living through one of the greatest breaches in recent history. He brings over 3 decades of experience in global IT delivery and strategic planning. He is a results-driven leader who has spearheaded massive technology initiatives for over 16 years as a senior executive in roles at Equifax. Wade Myers, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's great to have you, Wade. And, just add my personal welcome. Obviously, you and I worked together at Equifax and we had a lot of great time there. So looking forward to this discussion. So let's light up this the fire and crank up the heat. Let's get going in the smokehouse. So let's go back to 2017 and just I guess for those that may not be aware, back in July of 2017, Equifax, which is one of the major credit reporting bureaus, detected some suspicious activity happening in their network, and what it transcribed over the next 6 weeks, a team was working on trying to understand what went on and prepare for a public disclosure that happened in early September, like 6 weeks later, wherein Equifax announced that over 140 million consumers' records had been breached. And then a lot happened after that over the next sort of weeks and months, including the retirement of the CISO, the global CIO, who was my boss, and the CEO. Plus there were hearings and investigations and lawsuits, a lot of things that I'm sure we'll dig into. But and then, of course, I was terminated there on October the 3rd and blamed as the human error for the breach. So, all right, so Wade, take you back to that time. What was it like for you? I mean, when did you find out about the breach, and how did you and your team react? And tell us a little bit about your experiences from back right back in 2017.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. It was definitely a crazy time, and probably a little PTSD from those months. Finding out as well then the months that followed. But I can remember the day I was called into the war room and briefed on what was happening, which was a few days before the announcement happened. And then it's a blur for a little while after, and it was a lot. As you mentioned, a lot of people left. I was a vice president in technology for a portion of the USIS team, and I was then put in charge as the CIO of the USIS technology team as some of those upheavals started and the change happened. And it was, I would say, 8 months of just intense amounts of work that followed.
How did you, I mean, what about the team and the morale? Because I know, if I recall from, before I left, everyone was just, I mean, Equifax's name was in the news every day. I mean, people were getting harassed, and if you worked for Equifax, I mean, how did you kind of rally the team, and how did you help kind of keep the morale propped up during that time?
Yeah, that was a key part. I'd say keeping the morale as good as it possibly could be was one of the biggest challenges that we had. It's been a bit of a time since the fall of 2017, right? But it was, like you said, it was rough. There were people didn't want to talk to their neighbors at times because you felt like, I mean, it was it's a national credit bureau, lots of sensitive data on people, and people felt like, that we had let, a lot of people down in that kind of thing. And it was rough. And so and then you're also asking people to do tons and tons of work at the same time while you're trying to keep the morale up. And so, I think one of the key lessons that I learned through that was lots and lots of communication with the team around that time, and talking about what we were doing, why we were doing it, to make some of the remediation efforts, to do some of this, but you cannot over communicate. I I had all hands meetings every 2 weeks. I met with all of my directs daily. I did skip levels twice a week, just so people could hear from me, understand, what was going on with the CEO and the board and all of that, and that we were gonna obviously we invested a lot of money to try to rectify what had happened, and so that kind of communication is you can't estimate the importance of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the board and the senior management. I mean, there was one up until the point when I left. I mean, that was one of the things that struck me too, was just how many requests were coming in on kind of a daily basis for information, because everyone was looking for information on one thing or another and updates. And was that your experience as well?
Completely, yes. You can say that there was just a tremendous amount of work, and people are like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it. But one of the things that happens that you just don't realize is that request for information. And that takes down people that are trying to do other work as well, because, they know the systems, they know where everything is and all of that. And it's a constant request for that, while you're also trying to re-estimate and estimate what you're going to do. You're trying to bring on contractors. You're trying to do tons of stuff. But, as you said, the board, the senior management, people coming in to do audits, 3-letter agencies, lawyers, they all want information, right? And rightfully so. It's just, there's only so much you can do in a 24-hour period. So that was a lot.
I have a silly question for the two of you. I mean, how do you manage sleep? Like, when do you get to the point where you just tell your team, go home and go to sleep? Like, I can imagine, like, it's just nonstop. And there's a point where you just have to say, I need to go to sleep. And you tell your team to go to sleep. Like, how do you do it? Because I mean, in the beginning, it's got to be stuff coming at you left and right. How do you do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, the first 2 to 3 weeks, you're probably on fumes, right? I mean, it's not there. And then there is a new cadence and rhythm that starts to evolve after those first few weeks, and there's shifts, and then there's new processes. You actually put in a new structure as well, organizational structure, kind of, so that you're protecting engineers because they're having to do so much work. And so and then the communication. So you start to have different ways of organizing and processes to make that happen. But it is because people will break down, right? So at some point they're either going to break down and get sick and not be able to function because of the lack of sleep, or you're going to have to put a new structure in place.
And like Wade mentioned, from the time that the breach was discovered to when we went public, there was only a small number of people actually working in the war room and actually doing the kind of the pre public release stuff that we were trying to do, like protect we had to deploy monitors on systems. We had to like validate all the controls and stuff like that. There was a lot of changes that were going on sort of under the hood. And that was crazy for me. I mean, it's probably the busiest period of my life, right? And we were literally there. I'd have breakfast there. We'd bring in food every day for every meal. It was breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the war room every day. And but to Wade's point, after doing that for a couple of weeks, you just had to take a break. I mean, I just took a long weekend and just said, "Okay, gotta get out of here," because you get burnt up really quickly.
The other thing that started to happen, when you kind of look at 2 to 3 months out, is I had to spend quite a bit of time flying around the country talking to our customers about what happened. And that took a lot of time. Right. And they rightfully so want to understand what happened, why it happened, what we were doing to fix it. And so, that requires just obviously even more work, and to prepare and to have the materials, and they have to be obviously signed off and all of this. And you have to how are we going to talk to this and all of that. But it was like an apology tour, right? That I went across the country talking to, all of large financial institutions, all of our major clients, telcos, whatever. That was quite a bit.
Well, and I think that's also a good point. I mean, back to the motivation with the teams, when you're sitting there apologizing all the time. I mean, how do you keep your teams motivated when that's got to be a beatdown when a lot of negative publicity? I mean, how do you keep the teams motivated to just keep positive and keep your head up? I mean, how do you keep them motivated?
I think it's tough. That's a tough thing. I think one thing you need to do is stay as positive as you can and shield the team from a lot of the stuff that's happening in the background, which can be rough in a situation like that. The other thing I think is important is to talk about, what we were contemplating doing at the time with the investment that we were going to make to make it right and show that what we were doing. And that slowly starts to get people a little bit more motivated. It takes time, right? But you want to be able to say, look, everyone falls down, something can happen like this, but we're gonna pick ourselves up and we're gonna make it better than it was before. And that kind of messaging, right, will help with the folks. But you do need to shield the team from some of the craziness that's happening.
That's awesome. Well, let's transition to that to it. After those first few months and, living through the immediate crisis, there was new leadership came into the company, right? And new CEO and new CTO. And I mean, Equifax made a tremendous investment into a huge migration to the cloud and kind of re-platforming all its systems. And I know you were intimately involved with that. So, tell us a little bit about your role during that process, and then we can drill into that a little more.
Yeah. So, in the spring of 2018, right, we got our new global chief product data technology officer came in, and we started to embark on the transformation, which was to not only take everything to the cloud, but to re-architect the systems. As we took the opportunity to go to the cloud, you build it in a more efficient, better way for what the business needed. And so that was an exciting time, and that's then a time where you're kind of pivoting from this reaction, security remediation, kind of the beat down type of time, right? To hey, we're going to build a world-class technology data company. And so that now the motivation becomes a little bit easy, but the work can be extremely hard because you're trying to, build all of this while you're still running the systems that you have. And then you need to migrate and all of that. And that comes with all the complexities of the overused saying of you're changing the engine on the plane when it's flying, which is true, but that's what you're trying to do. At a high level, the approach behind it was, we do a number of things. Equifax does a number of things, and we're in a number of countries. Like many companies, a lot of things are duplicative within systems and platforms across different business units or across different countries because they need to be able to meet their own deadlines, and so they kind of work with them. There's not a lot of shared capabilities across. Sure, network storage, these kinds of things are shared, but a lot of times, like core capabilities that might be needed in the UK and Australia and the United States are rebuilt because they just want their own teams to own it. And so, that obviously costs a lot more and eventually leads to longer lead times for new product development, new innovation. And so we took the opportunity to identify what those global capabilities were, build those once as global capabilities that then each of the different countries, business units, teams, they could then leverage those and they can focus on the key capabilities within their region with their customers that are real revenue generating. So that was the idea behind the transformation, and we started them in the spring of 2018. And my role then, I was still leading the USIS business unit technology team, the CIO of USIS, and then over the years as we continued to do that, I transitioned into a global platform team and in charge of our identity and fraud business unit technology, and then eventually into the CIO role of all of the traditional CIO activities. But the transformation was quite an effort.
Yeah. So I think like you said, well, there's a couple of questions, I guess. Well, first one would be just on the challenge of bringing all those different previously disparate teams together to try and agree on what a new global capability would look like. Must have been pretty challenging. I mean, how did you bring that thought process together and come up with a like a design of the new global platform?
Right. I think that's a great question. It's certain things are kind of obvious, and then a lot of things might not be so obvious, and so you end up getting to a point of diminishing returns when you try to do too much. And so, like for example, one of them is the data platform, which we refer to as the data fabric. Obviously, Equifax has lots and lots of data, and it can be it's in many disparate systems. That information is usually not key linked against those different systems. And so when you want to combine data for a new product, it can be very difficult. And so the challenge of making dates and such is that, hey, well, just send us a copy of that data over here. And we can then leverage that copy of the data and we'll maintain it on our team so that we can then, be self-reliant and do, and handle new capabilities, new releases for our customers very, very quickly. And then suddenly you have sprawl of all of the data, which costs more to maintain and is a lot less secure and all of that, right? So we did say, yes, we're going to create one capability to house the data, which is the most complex of the platform, the global platforms that we had. And we could talk a little bit more about that, but it's very, cool architecture and that kind of thing with the data. But then we looked at other capabilities that we wanted to have, like a logging service or an authentication service or a workflow service. And a lot of we went through a session of, and worked at it for a number of weeks to come up with what those were and what kind of the architecture would be around those and base requirements for those. And then, I think we structured the team very, very quickly, and we erred on the side of making progress with less analysis and just go, because we had a short amount of time. Really, when you think about an endeavor like this, you can't keep spending money on a transformation forever. You do have to stop at some point and say it's done. And so there was a huge amount of pressure around the time that it was going to take to do this. And so we identified, say, a handful of these key capabilities and started on those. I think if you go too far, and you can go too far on global capabilities, if you were to make one mobile application as an example for all of the different countries, right? I mean, are you really gaining the benefits as opposed to letting those teams that maybe the team is a size of 10 go off and do what they need to do? And there can be some overlap, but you're gonna lose that. Where if you make them go and create their own data platform, you're talking millions of dollars, right? That's being wasted. And so I think if you stay on those core main capabilities that are global, it's you're gonna get the benefits.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, so I think they move fast and don't spend too much time on analysis. That's one. And I think you didn't say this necessarily, but I got to figure that there had to be a extremely strong leadership from the top to make sure that this happens, right? I mean, like you're on this train or you're not, right? I mean, to the point that if there's any kind of they just have to have strong leadership. If there's anyone kind of wavering, I mean, you've got to find another place for them, or it's probably out of the company, right?
Yeah, I think two key points on that. That is exactly right. I mean, this endeavor never would have worked without the board and the CEO and the senior leadership team all being behind that, right? And it's a tremendous amount of money, and would not have taken this on probably without the breach, right? So you're not letting a tragedy go to waste to do something like this, but it impacts the entire company when you do something like this. It's not just the tech team, right? A company like Equifax is run with the data and the technology, and when you change that, it impacts the sales team, it impacts the operations team, right? It impacts the HR team and all of that. And so that key sponsorship from everyone across the country is integral to make it work. It's paramount. And then the other point I think that you're hitting on is there's huge cultural change. And I would say the cultural change is harder and more important to get right than new technology within the cloud, say, learning the cloud technology skills. You say that now, it's been a number of years, right? But back then, not everyone had cloud technology skills. Today, that's almost right. It's just a given. But back then, lots of folks were, no, I want to work on prem. I'm not going to go to the cloud, right? I want to control everything. And so we brought on a number of people that had the cloud technology skills to help. And there's a lot of people that within the teams that didn't really want to do that. And we had to remove those people, right? Because we didn't have time to deal with that when you're trying to move that fast and spend that much money. And it's the future of the company that you're dealing with here, right? So you had to move those out. The other cultural aspect real quick, which is hard, is when you build global platforms, then the teams that are within the business units that need to leverage those global platforms have to rely on those global platform teams, right? I mean, if the workflow service is down, guess what, right? The business unit team that's leveraging that workflow service, they're down. And so it's a different way of working when you have to collaborate with that. And, lots of technology folks like to be self-sufficient and run their own thing, right? But it's a different way of working when you have to leverage your teammates like that.
Wait, there's something I'm really curious about. So you were mentioning bringing in, and recruiting people that had cloud experience. Like, was it difficult? So were people not wanting to work with Equifax? So they're like, oh man, they weren't good stewards of data, I'm not touching them. Or were they saying, hey, there's probably infusion of money, you're doing cool new things, like we're going to build, like I want to be part of this. Like, was it harder to recruit or easier? I don't know.
I think there's a little bit of both on that. So we, well, first off, we didn't have a lot of time to go out and do all of the interviews and hire everybody as full-time employees. So there was a lot of contractors that were brought in, and we leveraged a couple firms to help us initially bring in those skills. Secondly, there were some people we brought in key positions across, and they recognized that, hey, this is a big opportunity. They're investing a lot of money. It's not every day you get to build something and be something from the ground up, greenfield type platform development and the like. And so that's a big opportunity. And there's folks like that. And then there is, I think there's only so many of those kind of, managerial kind of, higher up positions. And so that are brought in. And so then there was some challenges, I think, with some of the other folks, but over time, you bring on folks and there's a network and people start to see what you're doing. And they really see that it's going to happen. You can start to bring on folks, but it is a certain type of person that's going to want to come in and jump into the fire with you and work through those things. And it was not a place those years afterwards where it's a 9 to 5 maintain, keep the lights on kind of job. Right. So it's a certain type of person you're looking for.
Very cool. Well, and then, I hear about Equifax really proclaiming, a security first approach. And I've learned from Graeme too, security was a priority even before the breach. It just, the events happened and, and there's a perception one way or another, good, bad, or indifferent. But now there's really an emphasis on security first. I mean, what did that really mean? And there's always a tension between getting things done and speed. And how do you balance that between speed and security? And so what you guys are building, like, how did you balance those two?
Yes. So we had, one of our tenants in the company was exactly that, security first. And so that was obviously, we couldn't let anything happen, again. And so security first was a mantra throughout the company, but it's easy to have the mantra. To your point, it's a little bit tougher sometimes to put into practice when there's so much pressure to get the next feature in so that you can, please your customers and all of that. I think a couple of things we did, was we had security folks aligned to the teams. If you just look like from an organizational process standpoint, there were security folks aligned to each of the application teams, platform teams, to make sure that we were, and they were owned and incented with the security posture of that code base or that, that application. And so that helped, just to put it front and center and to have some governance around what was happening in those teams. But I like to think of that and just bring it out a level. There's the idea of DevOps and DevSecOps and that kind of thing. And I think it's very important for those, you have to have those security requirements in there. And people will say, well, maybe 20% of the capacity should be on non-functional or whatever the number that someone comes up with. But it really starts to highlight a different, not a gap, but something that's extremely important is that the role of the product role within a team, and what are the requirements and the priorities of those requirements, and where should they fit in. And so many non-functional requirements are needed to maintain and keep a live breathing application up to date, not just the security requirements, but like performance and stability and all of those. And so security obviously is one of those, but we found that the role of product being aligned with tech to advocate for all of those is very, very important. And you need that skill within that product person to be able to understand the importance of security, the importance of the non-functional tech requirements, right? Along with not just, hey, I need another feature so that I win, the next customer. And that is, I think, is always a bit of an ongoing challenge to have that. But it got highlighted even more because of the importance of the security is what I'm trying to say.
No, that makes sense.
Hey, all right, so kind of just wrapping up this piece here a little bit, Wade, as you look back on that experience of going through that remediation, and I think Equifax spent over $1 billion in that transformation. It's a huge amount of money, a lot of effort. What are your kind of key takeaways? And this question is part A, and part B is, what would you do differently next time?
More vitamin C and sleep, I guess. It's a little differently. I'd have to think about that. I think that, a key takeaway I learned from that is, you can do more than you think you can do. You really can, as an individual, as a manager, as a leader, you can do more than you think you're capable of. And when times like that arise, you'd be very, people are surprised of what they can really accomplish in a short amount of time, the amount of grit and perseverance they might have, and people shouldn't underestimate, those kinds of things. You just have to keep going and keep trudging ahead. And but it is something to watch people come together and try to get over the line, and you can do much more than you think.
What about something you do differently?
I would. That's a great question. There's probably something I would do differently in the different phases as you think through what it is. But I think there can be such a pressure on the latest request when you're in a crisis to get that latest request done. And I think that you have to, and yes, every hour is an hour, every day is a day that you're trying to make something happen, but you need to carve out time in some type for yourself, as well as your direct reports, your leaders underneath you, to make sure that you're looking at the things that need to happen a week and a month ahead, as opposed to just the fire that is happening within that next, and I say hour, and it can be an hour, right? It can be what has to happen within this hour. And so if you don't do that, then you can't, you're not going to get out of the firefighting for a while when the crisis hits, but the more you can try to structure a team, how it's going to react to that gives yourself a little bit of that breathing room. I think you'll be able to start to scale your ability to improve.
I think that's great. That's great insight, Wade, because I see that with a lot of, particularly people moving into new leadership roles. They don't spend that time thinking far enough out, and they spend too much time in the moment, right, and dealing with the issue. And unless you've got to put some portion of your day or your time or however you allocate it to thinking about, and like you said, building the processes, developing the plans, thinking about the future, because otherwise you just get in this kind of circle of just going around and around on the issue of the day, right? Or the week or month, whatever it is. Yeah. It's a great.
It's interesting. It's all those things are the same thing that you need to spend time as a leader on when it's just normal working. But I think all of the things that you need to spend time on, whether it's communication or strategic thinking or whatever, these things get magnified in a crisis. And so it can be even worse, right? If you're not spending those times doing those things.
Well, wait, I got a funny story for you, and if we can't laugh about these things, why? What's the point? So, when I first met Graham, we were out in Phoenix, and I was going to meet a good friend of mine who was a customer at the time, but now a good friend. And I just said, you know what, Graham, you should come along. So we met Gary and his wife, throwing his name out there, and brought him along. We weren't really trying to sell him anything. We were just kind of catching up, and Graham came along. And so we had dinner, we had a bottle of wine. It was great. And I was like, hey, Graham, you should just introduce yourself and kind of give your background. So we'd been sitting there for like an hour, and he gave his background. He's talked about Equifax, and he gave some of the breach story. And he very quickly, Gary clicked and said, "You're Gus?" Looked over to the waiter, was like, "We're going to need another bottle of wine." Sharing of the whole story. And he was just fascinated. He was like, "Ernie, you're telling me I've been sitting next to Gus for an hour, and you're just now telling me this." And he just wanted to hear the whole story. So, question for you: when did you find out Graham was Gus?
Yeah, well, yes, I found out, and I can remember some of that. I can't remember when because it's a it's a bit of a blur on those times. But yes,
Yeah, that was good.
And just for everyone else, that Gus reference was during the testimony with Rick Smith, who was he retired as CEO, was in front of was one of the Senate committees, and he was describing what had happened, and he goes, it was a result of a human error and a technological failure, and he said. And then in questioning, the guy, one of the senators said to Rick Smith, "So you're telling me the whole security and protection of hundreds of millions of consumers' information is up to one person? It's up to Gus?"
I did hear about that, and I remember having a chuckle.
I had people texting me, people who knew what had happened. There was a few but texting me saying, "How's it going, Gus?"
That was a good story, and I think Gary appreciated to meet you, so that was pretty funny. All right, so I think we're right a little over, but we do have a couple leadership questions for you. So, how would you characterize your leadership style?
It's changed over the years, I think, especially with what I learned during the breach and the transformation. There's there's a term that's thrown around called servant leadership. I think it's thrown around a lot, and people don't really use it correctly. But there was I'll tell you some of, as opposed to just saying a style, these are some of the things I think are extremely important within leadership. And there was actually a Google study a number of years ago that was done, and it resonated with me. And I tried, and I thought that, that's how I try to act. And I found that there was, besides being proficient in the domain that you're responsible for, there's like 8 other traits that really make a good leader. It is, are you managing the people on your team and giving direct feedback, timely feedback, and that type of thing important, right? Do you have a clear vision and a purpose for the team? Outcomes matter, not just the work. And are you doing that? So results oriented, a clear vision for the team. Do you work across the organization to help with your team to get what's needed? Strong decision maker. Do you have a team environment inclusive of everyone in the team? Do you empower the team members, right? Do you not micromanage, but you're empowering the team? And so I think these kinds of things are, if you spend a lot of time on that, as opposed to just driving for the technical solution that you're trying to drive, will help you build the team that excels and wants to stay around.
Yeah, I mean, I think the feedback aspect and just having clear expectations, like you highlighted in the beginning, is just so important. And people don't do that. I mean, it's hard, especially if you have bad feedback, but it's important so people can improve, and that's very critical. So I think those are all very important.
Hey, skip it, changing topics here a little bit, Wade, but you've obviously you've lived through some pretty interesting times in terms of technology evolution. The last couple of decades. What excites you about the future? What from a technology or a personal perspective?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously technology advancements are happening very, very quickly, and I think the rate of change is increasing, which can be a little scary at times for folks, but very, very exciting. we had these different changes and evolutions with the internet or mobile or whatever, but obviously with AI coming along, it's happening very, very quickly. It's almost like every few days you see something and go, wow, that's amazing. And so I think what's exciting about that is that I think you're going to have a lot of smaller companies that can leverage a lot of the AI capabilities and potentially do something, very unique, impactful, more so and quicker than they were able to do in the past, hopefully. And I think some of the most exciting ones are companies that are trying to leverage data in a way that is unique to them, as opposed to just and leveraging that data for better insights than than simply just leveraging AI to be able to code something quicker, right? I think there'll be a lot of these smaller companies that'll figure out a way to leverage data um, to get better AI insights and have a better impact. So I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna be super exciting. I mean, we had like the internet came out like late '90s, and like this whole AI thing's gonna shift things. Another hockey stick shift in technology. So it's gonna be really cool to see where it goes. But hey, we just dove right into the whole Equifax thing, and I think it'd be nice to know what built up to that. So we'd like to know a little bit more about you. So like, how did you get into IT? What's the story from playing soccer? How do you get from playing soccer to leading IT teams and building infrastructures? Like, what was your journey into IT?
I grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico, so it's a little different. You don't. I get a lot of people that will like have lots of questions when you say that, right, about Los Alamos, or some people are just like New Mexico, like they have paved roads there, something like that. So you get a lot of different responses on that. But um, science, technology, very big growing up. Just in the living in Los Alamos, and I always enjoyed technology, and so wanted to do that. After college, yes, and played soccer in college and all that, I went to get a master's in computer science at UC San Diego, and decided I wasn't going to go on the PhD route. I think that's probably just weaning myself out of the Los Alamos National Laboratory kind of environment to decide that I'm going to go into more of a business kind of aspect for technology. And so I got that out of my system, and then started with what was then Anderson Consulting, now is Accenture. And I really enjoyed, seeing different projects with different companies and their problems and helping them solve those. And then worked for a smaller company for a bit. And then was at Equifax for 16 years and really enjoyed the time there. The amount of the data and the good that can happen by leveraging that data to help people was a great experience. And again, it was quite a time to be there through the breach and the transformation. So I feel, at the end of the day, you kind of feel lucky that you're able to do something from a transformation like that, just because not everybody gets the opportunity to be a part of, over $1 billion in spend to transform a technology stack. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I spent a lot of time on the West Coast and on the East Coast, back and forth, really.
I'm in San Diego now, and I don't know. A lot of us get here and we don't leave. So
La Jolla is not a bad place to be for a little bit. There is no doubt about that, right?
yeah. Oh, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, so now I'm doing some consulting. I'm helping some smaller companies as tech assessments, or how to actually, some business development and growth opportunities with smaller companies, and it's pretty exciting.
Very cool. Well, maybe we can get a chance. We're a small company, so maybe we get a chance to work together. We'll have to talk about it. All right. So if you could look back to your younger self, any advice you'd give yourself or young people out there, what advice do you have?
Well, it's a great question. So, maybe a couple things. One, I kind of said it a little bit before, but I think it's important. Don't underestimate what you can do. If there is a big effort out there, take it on. And the term "fake it till you make it" kind of thing, or just you'll figure it out. And I think that don't be shy about taking on those big things. Life is short. Your career can be short. When you really look back, it can be a blink of an eye, and you don't want to miss out on the opportunity. So if there is a situation that looks, oh gosh, I'm not sure I could handle that. That looks really hard. I shouldn't do it. You should just go ahead and try. You'll be surprised that what you can do. And then number two, I would say, looking back, I think as people move into management, you need to make sure you have the right folks on your team. right? And I learned this through the transformation. That when I spoke about the cultural change that we had to undertake, not just going to the cloud, but teams leveraging global capabilities, right? If you have A players on your team, if you have the right people on the team that have the skill, that have the passion, that want for the overall outcome more so than just their career will take care of themselves, and you can create these self-driving teams. And you just need to make sure you have the right folks on there. Having a couple wrong people on the team that aren't completely bought in hurts more than just those folks not carrying their weight. And so you got to get the right folks on your team.
Yeah, I really liked your opening. You just got to try it, because if you don't try, you failed out of the gate. I mean, that's it. So you got to try. And I think that's really good advice. All right, so this is the Cyber Smokehouse. So we do have to ask some grilling questions here. Are you a griller? Like, what do you got on the back patio? Are you a smoker? Are you into this, or is it just us? What do you got?
No, it's not just you. We've had a green egg for a very long time. We got one as a wedding gift when we got married in 97. So we've had one for a very long time. And I'm guessing you guys are pretty proficient in your smoking. I would say I'm not going to be as proficient as you guys are, but we do a lot of things on the green egg. We do some pork tenderloins, we do chicken. What seems to be lately, though, my son is a sophomore in college, and when he's home for the summer or the holidays, which we just had, him and his friends come over, and we seem like we're smoking chicken wings all the time now. And so we've been doing a lot of these chicken wings. If I don't have a chicken wing until this coming up summer, I'll be happy, just because I've had way too many of those. But we love to try different things on the green egg.
That's good. So our last company, we used to have we had a chat thread going all the time with it was all the barbecue smoker guys, and I'll give them a shout out here. There was a guy, Chris Hack, who was very big on the green egg. And I was a Traeger guy. Well, I'm still a Traeger guy. And he would just make fun of us all the time. He's like, that is not a smoker. It is a cooking appliance. And the green egg is where it's at. He was a big fan. And the other funny story about that was we had a lot of the guys that were, in the SOC and did a lot of incident response. And they hated it because on the weekends, our thread would go crazy because everybody's cooking. So they were like, we hate it because our phone goes crazy, but we want to see it because people are cooking, but we get nervous that it's a breach. They're just very conflicted because their work phone's going off, but they want to watch it. So that was always kind of fun. So, we'll give you the smoking credit for that one.
Well, that's good to hear, because I know most of the Traeger guys I know, they're very, very, they take it very seriously. They're very proficient. I'm not going to call them snobs on the smoking. I would never say that with you guys, but I do my best on the green egg.
I have too many smokers in my backyard. If one showed up, my wife would probably kill me. So
that's awesome. Well, this has been great. So Wade, how can people connect with you if they want to reach you? What's the best way?
Yes. I think through LinkedIn is probably the best. I'm out there on LinkedIn, communicating, interacting out there. So that would be best.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Wade. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I love talking about the transformation a little bit more than the incident and the response, but that was. It was okay to relive it, and great to talk with you, Ernie, and Graeme, catch up as well.
Great, thank you, and thank you to our audience. If you've learned something or laughed at something, please tell someone about this podcast. Thank you again, Wade. This has been another exciting episode of the Cyber Smokehouse. See you next time.
And that wraps another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at cybersmokehouse.com. Cyber Smokehouse is sponsored by TBD Cyber, a cybersecurity strategy consulting firm.
TBD Cyber works with organizations to assess their security program, develop and implement security initiatives, and optimize their security investments. We work in areas as broad as data security, risk management, cyber resilience, and security architecture. Our clients value us for our extensive expertise and independent advice, which is why we do not sell security products or deliver managed security services. If you want to work with a trusted advisor, we can help. You can learn more at tbdcyber.com. We'll see you on the next one.